It is Friday, and I am completely done being substantive and reading anything. I'm not reading anything else for the rest of the week. And so we are not going to do the standard author or substantive chat over relevant news issues. We're going to do something better. We are going to plumb the underserved headlines of the week. Dare I say the funniest headlines of the week. And I brought on two very funny friends to help me suss them out. Brian Sack and Jack Helmuth. Welcome back, gentlemen.
Thank you, Andrew. And which one of us is funnier? And I don't want to put you on the spot, but I'd like to know.
You know what it is? I can tell you, neither of you are remotely funny separately. It's like when you're making one of those volcanoes in high school of like baking soda and vinegar. The volcanic reaction is you in tandem, but it doesn't work separately. And separately, both of you all you want to talk to me about is actuarial tables. It's actually very depressing. I don't understand it at all.
Nailed it.
Yeah, it also is. That also works in the bedroom, where it's just sort of like, I'm not enough for my wife, but Brian comes in and it's like, to the moon.
Yeah, she really gets excited when I walk into the room.
Yeah, she really does, to the point where she then kind of wants me to leave. So it's sort of like that fun, like Brian Jack energy kind of isn't there anymore.
Yeah, we keep trying to get that point across where we'd like you to kind of leave, and you don't get that. You don't pick up on signals. You're not good with social signals.
People do not understand the depth of podcast host relationships. This is the commonality / potential wife swapping that you all enjoy far exceeds that of Queen. Far exceeds that of most rock bands because podcasters are the new rock stars.
No swapping in our case, though, Jack. I'm sorry, because my wife says she calls you the abominable Jack.
No, that's fair. That's flattering. I appreciate that. No, I mean, look, Heaton. They don't just give these podcasts out to anybody. So it is a
you got to get a podcasting license.
You got the gatekeepers.
Yep. You got to. Yeah, it takes you 4 to 6 years before you can finish your podcasting apprenticeship. And then you are able to podcast as a podcast master, as all of us are. All right.
Yeah.
Our first headline of the week is from Australia. Night parrot found to have poor vision, keeps running into things in the dark. So reading through this article, it appears that this special breed of parrot in Australia, purported to be a night parrot, actually just keeps flying into shit at night. Strongly indicating to me that it's not actually a night parrot. It's just a normal parrot with insomnia that's shitty at flying at night. That is my interpretation of this story.
Yeah, we either rename this thing or more intelligently design it.
Well, but what's interesting to me about this story is that it was at this university in Australia, Flinders University. Like, is that the best way to, use your grant money? Like when they're passing out grant money, they're like, and like a couple years ago, they're like, well, we could do forest fire prevention, or we could do this blind parrot thing.
Because it's hilarious.
Yeah. See, now I'm imagining like a bunch of those pneumatic tubes at the bank, only guys with lab coats dropping in parrots, and then like them shooting out and hitting various trees, and them going, nope, didn't work that time.
They should actually sell videos of this stuff, because I'd watch that.
Is it? I believe, okay, this is probably an urban legend because it sounds too good to be true, but it's my understanding that Winston Churchill's parrot like far outlived him. It was an African gray, which is the smart kind that talks, and that he had, like, it lived into the 80s or 90s, and that it would like cuss out Hitler, which I think is amazing. Like, because that's basically the only two ways you could get like tangentially close to Churchill at this point are to meet his son or cuss out Hitler with his parrot.
Oh my God, that's amazing.
The parrot kind of sounds delicious, though. Is anyone else sort of getting that vibe where it sort of is like, if I met that parrot, I'd be like, I'd kind of like to say I was the one who ate his parrot.
Birds are just weird because you think they make fun pets, but then they kind of sit on your shoulder. Because I had a conure years ago, and they just sit on your shoulder and shit. And you'd be typing away at your computer, and it's just pooping on your shoulder.
I don't think I would eat a parrot because my standard remains I feel bad eating anything as smart as a dog. I will sometimes, but I always feel bad doing it. And I don't know, because parrots can talk. Our dog can't talk. So yeah. I'm sure that this is something that is deserving of a grant at an Australian university, but I feel like they're probably in the same range. They're just very alien to each other.
But parrots just repeat. I mean, are they really talking, or are they just repeating what they hear? Are they basically bird Twitter?
Oh yeah, I read that like it varies from species to species, right? But some of them can put sentences together. Like they could say like Polly want a cracker, obviously. But like I watched this one show one time where like an African gray, which is the Ivy League of parrots, was talking to the Stanford equivalent or whatever, and the dumber one kept messing up, and the African gray would get pissed off and call it stupid. And like I feel like that's like a high level of intelligence to be condescending. If you can be condescending, like you're like keep your eyes on them.
Point.
My uncle had a parrot, and they kept trying to teach it how to talk, and they couldn't get it to do it. And they came home one day, and his wife was like, "Did you turn the laundry machine on?" And he's like, "No, I don't think so." And but they kept the parrot in the laundry machine or in the laundry room, and it would just mimic the laundry machine, and that's all it could do.
Okay.
Yeah, all it could do was mimic the sound of the laundry machines.
Jack's wife had a parrot, and I remember it used to say, "Quick, hide in the closet." I don't know if that was mimicking or if it was just new.
Well, it's so funny because then he would make these sounds that sounded like someone banging on a dryer or a washer.
Yeah.
That it would just take a nap, and it'd lose interest in everybody, and yeah, weird.
So strange.
Yep, she's a front loader.
From Baltimore. Police search Baltimore County house over BB gun in virtual class. So this happened to an 11-year-old. The 11-year-old, who I will add as a Boy Scout, was doing virtual classes because of COVID and lockdown and everything. And being a Boy Scout, he is actively getting his merit badges in BB gunnery and archery, and has such weapons mounted on his wall. They showed up in the video for the virtual classroom he was in, prompting someone within the school system to see that he owned guns, and so had cops come to his house to check and make sure he wasn't going to shoot anybody up. And I get it, but at the same time, it is a virtual classroom. It is in his room. And I feel like that kid is absolutely going to be a Republican now. Like there's no way that kid's not. Like if you're 11 and cops come into your room to look at your BB gun because somebody at the school snitched on you, that kid's going to be in the GOP.
And it's somebody in the class because it had to be somebody in part of your Zoom classroom who took a screenshot and then sent it to somebody and then had the cops come over. And clearly these rifles they have orange tips, so that's airsoft. Yeah. A couple of the other ones were BB guns. That is kind of ridiculous. They're very intrusive.
Well, it's okay. I like to think of this kid's life. I guarantee you that kid never loses $1 of lunch money for the rest of his education. We're not going to mess with Billy over here.
Billy, who are the cops come to his house. On the one hand, I see where the administration's coming from. If I were a principal and the email I got was kid in class cited with gun, and that's all, and I don't know all the relevant details. I just know that a kid was seen with a gun. Like I get it. So it's not so much that I have a problem with the school system. I just have a great sense of relief that I managed to get through school without being arrested. Like when I was in high school, my best friend was the prop master in our freshman year. This is before 9/11. He was the prop master for a play we did called Don't Drink the Water. And at one point, someone throws a fake bomb onto the stage that looks like dynamite kegs with a clock glued to them. And he came to me one day and he's like, "Hey, can I put this in your trunk? Because I don't want to keep it in my locker." And I was like, "Yeah, no problem." And I forgot about it. And about a week later, I was like, "Oh, I need to give it back." So I put it in his mailbox. I put it on top of his mail and fully intended to call him and be like, "Hey man, like go check it." And I just forgot. And so the following day I sat bolt upright in math class and was like, "Oh no, we left the bomb in your mailbox." We freaked out. We went to the principal's office, called my mom. Mom went over there and they'd set the mail on top of the bomb. Just put and we were like, well, I guess that's the end of it. And 3 days later, the Postmaster General of Oklahoma swung by their house to, make sure they hadn't died in an explosion, and wanted me to know never to use a mailbox as a returned item for used personal receptacles or what. I can't remember the wording, but in any event, I wasn't supposed to put bombs in mailboxes anymore. I think I'd be in prison if I'd done that 2 years later.
Wow.
But if any state in the Union in the 1990s should be calling in bombs that they see, it would be frickin' Oklahoma.
That's a very good point.
Wow.
Yeah. It also, like, I am kind of confused because it was like a 2 or 3 day gap. Like, I don't mean to besmirch the Postal Service, but if you clearly identify a bomb in a mailbox and it takes 72 hours to check on the family, I feel like there needs to be some efficiency built into that system. So there's all of us have some faults in that one.
My son got in trouble for his Zoom background.
What was it?
It was a Dylan Klebold poster.
That sounds like a guitarist. Who's Dylan Klebold?
One of the Columbine twats.
Yeah.
Then yes.
Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah. Okay. It makes sense. This might be the most serious story that we're going to cover today. It has the least punchline built into it. I'll put it that way. Twitter tests new feature that recommends reading an article before sharing it. So they're now trying an article out, or a feature out, where before you hate retweet something about how the other team is evil, or whatever the thing, or conspiracy theories, whatever the thing is that you go on Twitter for, Twitter will go, "Hey, did you read this?
Right.
Maybe you read it."
No, you didn't. If you didn't click the link.
And I just, I hate Twitter. Like, I've got to be on it for comedy purposes, and it's decent for networking, but I feel like the whole thing Twitter has is just, hey, do you want to bond over hatred? Like, that's like Twitter's motto should be bonding over hatred. And
It's a
man, I don't even have a joke. Sorry, guys. I whiffed that one.
Let's just bitch about Twitter for 10 minutes.
Yeah.
I could do that. Well, I like that they have a button, where someone has to prove that they read it. But I'd prefer that they then had a button that showed that they understood it.
That's the other problem. Yeah.
That would be great. Now, see, that sounds like the kind of social media platform I would make, where before you shared anything, there was a small 10-point comprehensive test that you had to do. And unless you fundamentally understood, like, what the judiciary is or something like that, they wouldn't allow you to retweet it.
You realize the Constitution doesn't forbid hate speech, correct? A or B?
That's funny. It's funny. I took an unusual. For some reason, for a comedy writer, I should do this more. But maybe I just think, you got to pay to get the good stuff. But I don't tweet enough. But this week, for some reason, I saw a chain about a lot of the political stuff that was going on. And Bridget Fetisi, who we were talking about earlier offline.
And I'll pause briefly. If there's anybody that's a Bridget Fetisi fan, I went on her show, Walk-ins Welcome, so you can hear me also complaining on her show. Sorry, Jack, continue, please.
No, please. I'm glad. Plug away. It's worth plugging. So I decided to make sort of a nuanced point to there was a string. It started off with Ken Jennings, and then she replied to a Ken Jennings, the Jeopardy champion. She replied to a Ken Jennings tweet, and then I replied to it. And I spent the next 12 hours. So when I woke up, so I did that at night. I woke up and saw, like, you have 128 notifications. And I was like, oh gosh, what is this? And that morning, and then for the rest of the day, I saw it was nothing but just the most vile. Hey, like, my stomach was in knots the whole day. It was like everyone is just saying all this horrible stuff on both sides because they were nuanced. So they couldn't. My point was nuanced, so they couldn't quite figure out if I was a libtard or a right wing loony. And so,
are you a fascist or a commie? Which one are you?
Yeah,
I'm gonna pigeonhole you.
Yes, that's what it was. But it made me feel sick. Honestly, it made me feel like I'd swallowed just bile, and it physically affected me for that day. I don't understand how people can do it and be in that life all the time. It's just it's so hateful. It's awful.
There are certain people who it doesn't seem to faze them, like Jesse Singal, who's a writer who I follow and stuff, and he gets vile stuff all the time. It just, I'm sure it bothers him on some level, but he just knows how to deal with it. I just ignore it.
Yeah, I like what I've started doing with social media, and I kicked this in maybe 5 months ago, is I had this light bulb moment where I was like, oh, wait a minute, I have a podcast where I'm allowed to talk about politics.
Right.
And it is my job, and I can also do it for like an hour, where I can actually say, like, that's a good point. I also think this, and engage in a nuanced level. Like, so anybody that wants my opinion, they can go listen to my podcast. And by the end of it, they'll be like, oh, I have a very good idea of his opinion. I can't do that on Twitter. Twitter, all I can do is, like, throw out some pithy, angry, very, very a contained statement inviting other people to hate on it. And I had this epiphanal moment where I was like, I'm only using Twitter for horse jokes and Star Trek from now on. That's it. If I coordinate like an Iranian revolution or flood relief, it'll come back to being useful for me. But otherwise, I'm just going to talk about Garrick and like stuff I find funny about smoking cigars. That's it. That's why it should be there. The internet should be mostly for porn and horse jokes, in my opinion.
It wouldn't be bad if it went away. It's such a terrible medium.
Do you guys like that? For no jokes, do you guys like that feature for Twitter as is proposed, where you have to somehow prove that you've read it?
I think it's great to make people think about. I think it's great to make someone consider for a second. Okay, maybe I don't know more than the headline.
Andrew?
Yeah. Yes. I think that there are millions of people who, instead of donating their time or resources to make the world better, tweet a bunch of shit nobody cares about on Twitter, and then furiously like go home and applaud themselves and how wonderful they are. And anything to irritate those people, in my mind, is a win. So if you could make them feel a little bit more discomfort about, shouting anger into a vacuum, great.
Yep.
All right. Tirade accomplished, guys. All right. From Switzerland, Swiss police investigate boy ate over toy banknotes. So, 8-year-old got Chinese spirit money. If anybody's unfamiliar with this, like at a lot of Asian temples, you'll have like altars where you can burn fake money. Yeah. And it's you buy it. You can burn 8 stacks of fake money that only costs like $1 of real money. So you're getting bang for your buck in terms of burning. And one of these kids got a bunch of this and went into a toy shop or something, and the clerk at the toy shop was like, I know he's 8, but it is counterfeit. It's counterfeit. And I'm Swiss. My hands are tied here. So he called the local, German-speaking constabulary, and they came, and I don't believe the kid was arrested, but I believe he does have a record till he's like 35 or something.
They have mugshots, and he will have a record until 2032. So until he's 20 years old.
So I don't know. I'm going to be honest with you. I'm not super well informed about the Swiss criminal justice system, specifically pertaining to juvenile delinquents. But I feel like this is the kind of thing where normally you would exercise some discretion as a prosecutor in the United States and be like, yeah, this doesn't sound like a mastermind kid to me. This doesn't sound like, and even then I got to say, like, if an 8-year-old tried to counterfeit currency, I'd be kind of proud of that 8-year-old. I'd be like, listen, kid, you can't do this. You have to become a banker first. Then you can do it.
It's part of that mentality that I've seen in Germany also. It's like, well, the speed limit is 45 miles an hour, so I will go 45 miles an hour, not 1 mile an hour over. And I've seen that before in taxis, which is really painful when you're trying to get to the airport. But I know, the Swiss don't mess around. Do you remember the story of the Swiss woman? Well, she wasn't Swiss, but she was living in Switzerland, and she wanted to become a citizen, but she was an annoying pain in the ass vegan who was known throughout the community as being a pain in the ass. And the people in the community actually got together and made sure that she didn't get Swiss citizenship. She was denied it because she was such a pain in the ass.
Okay, so I think that sounds like a much better immigration system than what we have. Our current immigration system, so Australia and the UK and Canada, they all have a point-based system where you speak English and you've got a master's degree that's 6 points and 4 points, and then you're
minus 6 points.
Yeah, so they try and structure their immigration system to basically import high-earning workers.
Right.
Our immigration system has much more of an emphasis on kind of getting families kept together and allotting it on a per country basis. Right. I like the idea of just avoiding assholes. That sounds like a great immigration system to me, where they just you want to come to America, and they're like, great, we're going to send you to we'll send you to Milwaukee or some random town, and you basically just going to hang out at the community center for a week, and if they like you, you get to be American. That sounds great.
Don't complain about the cows.
That's
well, it's funny. That's what our immigration system was at one point, especially in the late 60s when we had a lot of Indian people come in, which is one of the reasons why they started winning all these the American spelling bees, is because they came over only sort of based on their intelligence. We took the smartest Indian people and just took them all and had them come over here and excel and be great. But they brought that work ethic with them. And so they put that into their children, who then studied, and now win the spelling bee every year. Is an actual study that that is what happened.
Oh my! Okay, so here, I think you've struck onto another brilliant immigration insight. This has been a surprisingly good policy episode. So here's what I'm thinking. First of all, the main thing is, are you a dick or not? Right? That's the main threshold we have. But like for people that are anti-immigrant, that just don't like immigrants, you pitch it like this. Do you guys know what would really piss off India? If we took all their smart people, man, that'd piss off India. Yay, America.
Let's do it.
USA.
Take all the smarties.
And then have like a coach come out and explain, like, you know, when the Broncos gets the quarterback from the other team, that's what we're doing with this. I don't know. My sports is now lost me, but that seems like a really good way to pitch it.
Yeah, is high end free agency.
Yeah, it's like how about like just a picture of planet Earth superimposed on the flag with brain drain USA, and then everybody could get in favor of it.
Totally.
Yeah, as long as we
smarties.
Soon it's going to be Trump rallies with tear down the wall,
bring in the smart ones.
Yeah, I think that might be it. Is just figure out how to couch immigration in terms of high school football rivalry. I think that might be the thing. Actually, speaking of India, Jack, from India, Indian man upsets wife by bequeathing land to 2 elephants. So an Indian man has opted to bequeath most of his land to 2 elephants that he says saved his life from intruders, and his wife and children are angry about this. He has given them, actually, it's not a huge amount of money or land. I think it's like 6 acres.
6 acres or something.
Yeah, which is it's decent, right? But that's not like a crazy sized estate. And he left some amount of, I think he left some portion of it for his, half an acre for his wife and his kids and stuff. And I read this and I was like, I didn't know you were allowed to leave your property to elephants. This sounds cool. I think I'll do that. I'm happy to leave my stuff to elephants.
I didn't realize, from the article, it made it sound like elephants are wandering all around India and just dying in the street, because that's the guy wanted the elephants he had to avoid that fate. So apparently that happens a lot in India. See, that's another thing that I would like to make happen in America, stray elephants. I think that would be really cool. I'd rather see elephants than deer, on the side of the road, for sure.
You know what? A lot harder to sneak up on an elephant. A lot harder to not see the elephant coming because it wants to mate at 11 p.m. on a highway.
Exactly.
You're less likely to run into that elephant. Yeah, I agree. And I got to say, as somebody from the middle of the country, we've got lots of flat space and it's kind of boring. And you know what would really spruce up a sunset in Kansas? 40, 50 elephants. I think that would be neat.
But in India, I mean, you talk about the 6 acres, the 6+ acres being, not a lot of land. They got 2 billion people crammed in there, man. That seems like... That's
true. You're right.
Probably pretty good living.
No, that's like when I lived in Manhattan, I had a courtyard and I had to explain to people that that is the equivalent of owning a stadium in Iowa.
Right. Yeah.
And so 6 acres in India, that is that's the equivalent of him owning Rhode Island and deciding to give most of Providence to a couple of elephants. That is a good point.
Meanwhile, when I was in Oklahoma once on a business trip, I'm talking to this guy and he's like, yeah, I got a little place outside the city. I'm like, oh, yeah? And he's like, yeah, how big? And he's 800 acres.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that sounds about right. Would you get into the middle of the country, I've driven an hour and a half for tacos before. But there's also so much less mental wear and tear traveling an hour and a half. You have to think you just get in your car. And you're time to drive, and that's it. You don't have to think again until the car is stopped. Whereas when you're in New York, there's so many different sensory stimulus coming in all the time that an hour and a half in New York is more like carving your way through a Vietnamese jungle with a hatchet for an hour and a half. It's just a far more strenuous activity.
Yes.
Actually, I want to swing back before I forget this. Brian, you mentioned a minute ago with the Swiss that you encountered people that were emphatic about driving the speed limit and that kind of thing. I had a fascinating juxtaposition when I traveled from, I think, Interlaken in the German part of Switzerland to Milan, because I was backpacking when I was in my early 20s, and I went from Switzerland to Milan, and I was going to go from Milan to Venice. And I remember the train, as I was coming in from Switzerland to Milan, a guy came over the speaker and he went, "Passengers, we apologize. The train will be arriving 6 minutes ahead of schedule. We apologize for this discrepancy." And it made zero sense to me of why anybody would ever apologize for being early. And then conversely, I got on the train in Italy, and we went for like 2 hours, and then the train stopped, and it just stopped for 2 hours, and it had been overbooked, so I couldn't sit. I was just standing in the vestibule, and I finally grabbed a conductor, and I was like, "Hey, like, what's happening?" And he goes, "I can't do the accent," but he goes, "Hey, excuse us, the train made a wrong turn." And I was like, "What? It's on a track, isn't it? Couldn't I in theory pilot said train? Like, isn't it just like levers about speed?" And I was like, "Oh man, yeah, very, very different."
Yeah, they're incredibly different.
Can I share? I have a German train story.
Yes.
No. So I visited Germany for one day, and I was riding the metro with my girlfriend. We were headed from our hotel back to the train to then go to Poland. And so we're riding the metro, and we had gotten our little tickets to get on board, but there was no like turnstile. You just walked on. So I was sitting there with my girlfriend and saying like, why did we waste our money if you could just walk right on the trains? Like, what's the deal with that? And we go as another stop or two. And then all of a sudden, 2 German police officers get on the train saying, "Tickets!" And everyone, it was like a lightning bolt in a field full of chihuahuas. I mean, everyone jumped like, "Oh my gosh." And it was like, "Oh, like, I guess you better have your ticket," because these people were like, they were freaked out. That east-west thing was still there, that real serious thing. And they were like, there was no messing around with those folk.
One time when I was on a German train, I needed to get off in some time. I don't know. I was going from Berlin to someplace, and I look out the door and I see like Aufstrung. I can't remember that. Let's say it's Aufstrung. And I'm like, oh, okay, must be the next stop. And the next stop's Aufstrung. And I keep looking over for like an hour. And I'm like, God damn it, Aufstrung must be a giant state here in Germany. And I finally ask him, I'm like, where the hell do we get out of Aufstrung? And then like, Aufstrung means exit. Yeah. And I was like, damn it. And that's how I went to France, is I overshot a whole country and went into another country. Excellent.
Funny.
All right, final story for the day. This one comes from Tucson, Arizona. Naked man found dead near Wilcox after falling through kitchen, ceiling, and then being hit by a vehicle. I'm going to go ahead and read this one. It's a quick one, and I feel like it needs to be read. The 46-year-old man was found dead near Wilcox on Tuesday. According to the Cochise County Sheriff's Office, an acquaintance of the man reported that he had climbed into the crawl space of a home in the 3600 block of Robbs Road, then crashed through the kitchen ceiling. Joel Matthew Miller, who was naked, ran from the home and into the desert. Deputies found him lying on Kansas Settlement north of Robb Road. Investigators say the man was hit by a vehicle and had been left in the roadway. He was pronounced dead at the scene. Anyone with information should call 520-432-9502. So to recap, the man broke into a house, crawled into the crawl space above the kitchen, crashed through the kitchen naked, once discovered, bolted from the house into the dead of night where he was hit by a car. And my first thought was to make some joke about like Breaking Bad and drugs and all that. I think this could be the greatest sequel to Clue. This could be absolutely amazing to try and figure out how this absurd turn of events came about. I would watch that film.
Everything about this story, starting from the headline, which is one of the most poorly written headlines I've seen in a long time, because naked man found dead near Wilcox after falling through kitchen ceiling, then being hit by vehicle, which makes it sound like there was a car driving through the kitchen when he fell out of the ceiling.
Right. Yeah.
And then I was so intrigued by this story that I actually went to Google Maps and I looked up the address. And there's like one house and nothing around for miles. So like, how does this guy come running out of the house and not see headlights or anything? I mean, there's nothing around, but he manages to connect with the car.
And how did he get there?
Yeah, I found another article because I was curious about the story because it was so Florida man-ish.
Yeah.
He'd broken into his acquaintance's house, I guess.
Okay.
But he's just some weird dude who's now dead.
Now, Brian, a lot of the times when you break into people's homes naked, you have like a different sort of point of view. You don't like to hide in crawl spaces because you're worried that it's too constricting.
No, I'm always in the living room like I'm here to take pictures.
Yeah. The first time I came home and Brian was naked at my house, he just gave me like a cheers with some of the beer from my fridge and went, "What do we do now?"
Right.
Yeah. And
I like to break the ice.
Should I be ashamed?
I say, should I be ashamed of my body?
Yeah.
And then I give like a knowing wink and just kind of wait and see what happens.
Yeah, and you did it so confidently. I was like, I feel bad that I even thought this was not an appropriate thing for Brian to do. And I am curious as to where Brian got a key to my apartment.
Yeah.
But I couldn't even ask you about that because I felt so bad about body shaming you.
Thank you.
Best back rub I've ever gotten.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, guys, that is it for this week. These are literally all of the relevant headlines of the week. If you listen to the podcast, you were completely educated on the entire news cycle. You don't need to do any further research. Gentlemen, where can people find you and your antics?
Take it away, Jack.
We are Questionable Material with Jack and Brian. Every place where podcasts can be found. We like to do comedy for everybody. We make fun of everybody. We actually have kind of maybe a controversial, sort of a topical episode this week where we talk about defunding the police, but with just comedy. It's just telling jokes. So come on over and have a laugh at the news with us.
Well, guys, pleasure talking to you. Thank you.
Thanks,
And
Andrew.
have a good weekend.
Thank you, buddy.